All right, guys. Thanks for coming back to King Ugly Crew again today.
Oh, hey.
We're deciding to pull an audible today, and we decided we'll do Car Crashes Part 2 some other time.
Just for those that don't speak French, that is part 2.
For those of those youngins that probably don't remember Hot Shots Part 2, that's what it's an homage to.
I have no idea what you're referring to.
Yeah, you're one of them youngins.
How old are you?
Okay, so anyway, we've decided we're going to talk a little bit about diesels today. Why we love them, why we think they may be better than gas motors, and how we got into them.
Oh, the
Not
diesel.
necessarily better. They're different.
Better.
See,
Different.
it's definitely an opinion that some people have that it's better.
Better. I mean, only if you count.
Better for everything except for toys.
Really, if you had a choice of a diesel motorcycle.
Well, it depends on the toy, because some things you need high revving things, and the diesel's not going to work well for you.
Like rock crawling, I would prefer have a diesel all day long.
Torque.
Yeah, if I had a diesel in my freaking Jeep all day long, I would love that.
Do it.
Torque saves everything. Who needs RPMs when you got torque?
We don't need rip'ems.
You do in the sand.
Hey, TDI and your trooper, Griffey.
Torque.
You need a TDI and your trooper.
Torque will dig you a hole. It won't get you going.
Okay, so anyway, a little bit quick how we got started in it. Our dad had one back in the day. It was a 6.2, so it was in the shop more than it wasn't in
Chevy.
the shop. Yeah, it was a
This
Chevy.
was like in the 80s.
Yep, brand new.
Pre-turbo, right?
Yeah, they didn't do turbo until 6.5s, and not all 6.5s were turbo. And so he kind of
Turbos changed the diesel world.
absolutely he hated diesels.
Yeah.
And then he was constantly thinking about how in the 90s, late 90s, that he was going to go back to a diesel, and he loved the Cummins motor, so he was like, yeah, I could deal with a Dodge if I got the good motor.
He loved the look of the Dodge truck, and
They
the
looked
Dodge
great.
trucks looked great after they left that square Gen 1 body style. Those were ugly. They're coming around again. They're kind of cool, but the Gen 2 with the, the fenders that look like a 50s truck, Ford, Dodge, and Chevy all had that look. Those were pretty cool looking, and that's what he liked about it.
Exactly. And so he was thinking about that. Well, then he had a guy that was working for him, had a crew cab long bed Ford with a 7.3 Power Stroke in it. He kind of started really liking that. And then we had another friend in Shoshone when we moved there, also had a pretty much the same truck. And so he started really liking them, started looking into it. And our first Ford, and this was a big deal. I mean, you can ask Dane. It wasn't so much for the little kids because they probably don't remember it. That'd be Griff, Case, and Barron.
Dad was anti anything Ford. That. Ford was the 4-letter F word you weren't allowed to say in our house.
Yeah, we didn't own a Ford, and then all of a sudden, he got a 99 Ford F350 crew cab long bed.
Amazing.
Forest green.
First to the Super Duties.
Our sister Tatiana wouldn't even ride in it. She was like, Dad, this is a Ford.
Yep. And real quick, I want to talk about my experience with this because I was on my mission when Dad picked it up, and I came home like a week after, and they had all gone to Florida for a job in this truck. Well, in Italy, I hadn't kept up on what the Fords looked like. Everybody just kept telling me through letters, oh no, it's a new design. It's the new design. And so I'm picturing a feminine-looking Ford F-150, that they made into a 3/4 duty, or a 3/4 ton and 1 ton. And I had no idea about the Super Duty. So when I got home and actually got to see the Super Duty, they were good-looking trucks. And I think Ford did a good
Still
job.
are.
They still are, yep. Probably one of my favorite-looking trucks out there is a Super Duty. Not the new ones, because the new ones, there's almost no difference looking between the F-150s and the
the Illuma
F-250 and
Duties.
350s. Yeah, they just
Still love them.
don't look like a Super
I
Duty.
want one.
I still want one.
No, but
The motor, yes. The truck, heck no. And I'm an independent front suspension kind of guy. But so I got home, and they didn't get home for another 2 weeks after I got home, so I still didn't get to see it. But I had looked up on the internet and stuff of what they looked like, and I was really impressed because I was first thinking it was the old square style like that 97 that Lana was talking about.
OBS.
Oh, old body style, yeah, OBS. So I was pleasantly surprised. And then the first time I got to ride in it, the thought was, it was not supposed to push me back in my seat like that. It's not supposed to keep pushing me back in my seat like that. It never stops pushing me back into my seat. It just keeps pushing me back into my seat. So I was pretty impressed with it.
Yeah, I mean, they weren't awesome power, but for the size of the truck, the torque was great. They ran great. I mean, I own one again. It'll be the third one of that truck I owned, and actually that particular truck ended up going to me after about a year and a half, maybe 2 years, something like that.
It was lifted, wasn't it? Did you lift it or did Dad lift it?
I just leveled it, so just enough to put 35-inch tires on it. So the back was the same as factory, just the front leveled out to put the 35s on.
That really introduced us to the diesel world. Well, me, Baron, and Case.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, just when they were talking about how Ford was the word you never said in the house, I'm like, that was not our case. I mean, we had so many Fords sitting out in front of our house all the time. I mean, it was just common to go get in the truck or get an excursion.
Well, at that same time, Dad bought the Expedition as he bought that the green truck. So
Yeah, and then he learned again that the Ford makes a terrible gas motor until the EcoBoosts.
Coyotes.
It was
5.0s.
it was more 5.0 is a good motor, but it was more the engineering behind it that Dad hated. It was to get to this one bolt that should take you 5 minutes, you got to take off 4 other things that take you 5 hours. And it was the engineering behind it. And he always thought GM did a really good job engineering their things to be able to get to everything without having to take the entire motor apart. I.e., bad example of
The whole reason the Case is going to
Baron.
mechanical engineering. Or yeah, that's what I meant, Baron, not Case.
But
My bad.
I mean, a bad example of that would be GM and the first Duramax, where you had to take the heads off to get to the injectors. That would be an example of bad engineering.
you can blame that on Isuzu.
I mean, Chevy was great. Their door. I mean, as long as you like their interior and you got to bring it into your house all the time, Chevys were fantastic.
They were so much better than Dodge, but Ford was always better in interior.
100% of agree. The OBS. I owned an OBS Ford, and coming from the Chevy world, OBS's interiors were so much better than the Chevys because every Chevy fell apart in that generation.
The door panels would always come off. Same, I mean, even Mom's, the Buick
The Rainier.
Rainier, the door panels coming off.
Which is another one that all of the panels fall off, and Ford was like, you know, it would work a really good way of holding this thing together? A screw.
What a concept.
Screws.
Actually, the way that they did it is totally different. It's not just a screw, because they all use screws. The door panels on those actually have hooks, so they slide in. They're a big plastic hook that hold them in place.
In the Super Duties, the OBSs weren't as good as that, but they didn't fall apart. That was the difference.
True, absolutely true.
But it's about the motor. Like, what was the big difference between, he obviously had gas motors and those OBSs and whatnot, but it was the torque is why he bought that thing.
Oh, it's a 7.3. I mean, truly, it was a diesel side of things that lured us to it. I mean, as we grew up, we started to enjoy Fords more. I mean, still, I think Baron and Case, at the end of the day, are you going to say a Ford gas motor is better than an LS or an LT1 or a small block Chevy? No.
No, by no means.
Well, I mean, my 4-cylinder in my work truck, I have an EcoBoost, and that thing is really, stout for what
It's
it is.
extremely well engineered. They're a common rail motor. They're based off of a diesel design, so they are a great motor. But all we're saying is that a naturally aspirated, if you took that same naturally aspirated, it's not going to hit the same thing. I mean, you can throw boost in an LS and still make ridiculous power.
Oh, absolutely.
I think we need to go back to what we were pulling with before Dad got a diesel.
Yeah.
91 or 93, Lana? It was 93, wasn't it?
It was a 91.5 Chevy
Okay.
pickup.
So 3/4 ton.
Well, actually, so it's a light duty 3/4 ton because it was 6 lug axles, not 8 lug axles, which is funny because you'd go in and you'd say, I got a 3/4 ton, and they'd be like, all right, well, what's the GVW on it? And you'd be like, I don't know. And they'd be like, well, here's the drum for it. And you'd be like, no, that's not it because that's 8 lug. And they'd be like, okay, well, then it must be the lower one.
It was a heavy light duty or light heavy duty? Light heavy duty.
It was a light 3/4 ton.
I mean, so that truck had 210 horse stock. I don't know the torque numbers on it, do you?
180, I think, so they were.
275.
Oh, did you just look it up?
Nope. Dad had brought it up to me many times because he compared it to the diesel Mercedes that were 275 foot-pounds.
So 210 horse, 275 foot-pounds. I remember pulling a 5,000 pound trailer with 15,000 pounds of steel from Salt Lake back to Idaho
Rough.
when I was 15 years old and didn't have a license. And there's some, because Dad jacked his back up and he couldn't drive. So I had to go back from Salt Lake pulling 20,000 pounds with a 3/4 ton truck that was way loaded beyond where it should have been.
How are you alive?
3/4 ton small block Chevy. I mean, it's not like the thing has tons of power anyway.
Well, and I mean, Dad, that whole motor was a roller motor after he got done with it. I think, what did he do? 300 horsepower to the wheels?
It was 310 down at sea level, but he never dynoed the roller motor. He only dynoed the motor that he was just thrown on all the different exhaust and power pulleys and all that type of stuff, and did the Vitalik spacers on it.
The red glass?
Right, that was not the roller motor. That was just a factory motor that had parts thrown at it.
But I mean, we ended up getting, just taking the truck because, shoot, we've been to Houston, we've been to Florida in that truck, we've been pretty much every single state except Hawaii and Alaska in that truck, almost. On Lana.
Oh yeah, that truck had been to every state except for Alaska. I don't think he drove it to Alaska.
And it got 19 miles per gallon. And this is 91 batch injection.
Throttle body injection,
That's
not
pretty
batch.
impressive for that. And then throttle body, yeah.
They still fired, but it still ran really good. I mean, what was crazy was a short bed, extended cab, and if you revved it up a little bit, drop the clutch, it lit the tires up.
And you could go through second gear spinning tires.
Yeah,
We stopped doing that when we had to pay for
Right.
tires, but hey, when Dad was paying for them.
and they were 33.12.5, so I mean, they weren't a skinny tire either. So I mean, it had some good meat on them. So yeah, we went from that to a 99 Power Stroke 7.3, which horsepower wasn't more. I think they're 250 horse factory on that one.
But 525 foot-pounds of torque, I thought.
I actually think it looks like it is 500 even. Substantial torque difference.
Significant difference between the gas.
And you've also got to take into account that it's not naturally aspirated. It is, a boosted or, forced induction application. And by doing so, at altitude where we lived at in Idaho, we were 35 or 4,000 feet, I think, Dane, if you remember correctly.
37.
And so you still have those issues of losing power at that altitude, and you don't have that much of a power loss at altitude with a turbo because you're making your own atmosphere at that point.
Followed by the fact that none of them ever stayed stock. They always got chipped.
And exhaust.
They did, but that one we took on the very first drive when we went to Florida, like Dane said, and it was completely stock. I mean, we literally picked it up and headed on our way to Florida. We had a job we had to go get installed out in Florida.
Well, that and the truck was still brand new. That body style had just come out, so I doubt there was a lot of options for it yet.
Yeah.
That one, so we actually we didn't order it, but we found it in it was in the WordWorks. It was basically being built, and so we had to get it trained. It was freighted on a train to Salt Lake, and then they had to get it from Salt Lake to Twin. We picked it up and drove to Shoshone, load up everything that night, and off we were.
But I believe it got chipped in exhaust as soon as it got back.
It was pretty soon. I mean, I would say within a probably it was a hot minute. I mean, it was quick, but I mean, now looking back on things, the two things that matter the least on a diesel are an exhaust and an intake.
It was a chip. He chipped it is the main thing he did.
Yeah, he went through quite a few different ones. The first one he did was, I think, just a regular BD. And then after that, there was some different iterations of different companies that we went through. Truthfully, at this point, I would be putting an adrenaline or is it Quadzilla, Griff? Quadzilla.
Yeah.
Next one. They make it. It's quite a good one. I really like it on Griff's 7.3 Power Stroke. So I've got 6 different diesels at my house right now. We've all got at least 1 or 2. I can't think of any of us that don't have at least 2, except for maybe Case.
Jason.
I was more meaning the people on here right now. But yeah, Jason doesn't have any. Tashi and Casper, they have 1.
My old truck.
Right. So I've got 6. I've got 2 Dodge Cummins. I've got 3 TDI Bugs, and I have my 7.3 Power Stroke. We're still really big fans of the of the diesel industry without a doubt.
Yep.
I'll tell my story real quick about how I got into diesels, and it's Barron's fault.
Heck yeah, it is.
It absolutely is. I had a 6-liter Avalanche, motor Avalanche, and it had the power when you needed it. You just had to be up in the RPMs to use it. So I went to Glamis from Vegas. I was pulling a trailer, probably weighed 1,500 pounds, and then I had my 4-seat Razor on it and gas and everything. So I'm probably pulling 4,000 pounds total, and this truck, and I'm getting, I think I got 8 miles per gallon down and back. And so the next year, exact same load. Actually, I think I might have had the 1,000 by then. And the 1,000 is heavier than the 800 was. So same load, going down to Glamis. I asked Barron if I can use his 6-liter Power Stroke because he's telling me all the time. It's like, you realize we have the same size motor, right? And I think that's what did it for me, is him giving me a hard time that we had the same size motor. Well, I had all the power I wanted. I didn't even realize that I was pulling a trailer the whole time, and I got 15 miles per gallon, which isn't fantastic, but it's almost double what I was getting with the Avalanche. And to just pull it so effortlessly is what blew me away. Now, I mean, keep in mind, turbo would add a lot to the Avalanche too, but stock, it didn't have a turbo, and Barron's did. And
Not in the same way.
it's different though. I mean, there's so much usable power. And I think that's the difference with diesel versus gas. Gas, in the gas world, everything's horsepower, and in the diesel world, everything's torque. Well, the torque is all the usable power. The horsepower you don't get into till you're in your, high RPMs. And so it's the usable power that just makes everything so nice. But that's what made me switch. And then I finally got my 07 Duramax and got my big boy truck. Made me feel like a grown man once I got my diesel truck.
I'm a big boy now.
Dude, it's exactly how I felt. It was like, oh, I finally made it.
I could understand that.
Sold his Camaro and everything.
Disliked the gas so much he doesn't have any gas vehicles left for himself, except for his wife.
Yep, but we've been looking at an Audi Q7 diesel. We'll see what happens.
Dang, on all diesel.
Baller.
Except, there's no point in buying a diesel with all the DPF and EGR and all that junk on it.
Not until they get it figured out.
Agreed.
I mean, we're still in the smog era of diesels. That's really what it comes down to. Let's be honest.
It's just the reliability. I mean, yeah, you can still get the power, you can still get the mileage out of them, but you're taking a 1,000,000-mile motor and turn it into a 150,000-mile motor.
If that.
Well, but that, from an engineering perspective and from a sales perspective, that's great for the manufacturers because, okay, well, now we can make them less reliable. We make people buy new trucks every 5 years.
Brilliant.
I mean, it's great on that side of it, but for us, the consumer, it's awful. They force us to have a terrible product.
Yeah, nothing never got better by making it more complex.
Yep.
Keep it simple, stupid.
I disagree.
Yeah, look at the EcoBoost. The EcoBoost is a fantastic gas motor. Same type of common rail injection. There's a lot of really cool things about it, but they've got it figured out as far as the emissions compliantness goes.
Okay.
That we're still in the smog era of the diesels.
Are you saying that it wouldn't run better without being fed its exhaust?
Absolutely not.
Okay. EGR, retarded, making it more complicated.
Never would have got there, though. That's kind of the way I explain it to most people with that talk about emissions on diesels. A good example is that we would have never had a Hellcat if the industry would have not been pushed forward by emission standards. Yes, emissions suck and they really do hurt these cars, but we would still have carburetors.
No.
At this point in time, if emissions, yes, we would.
Absolutely. Why
No.
they didn't need to get any more efficient. There was no reason for them to get more efficient.
If it ain't broke, don't fix it.
Exactly.
No, that's totally
That's not true, guys. Think about a 7.3 Power Stroke. The emissions didn't come into the 7.3 Power Stroke until 2000, until 99. So then why did direct injection come into Power Strokes? Why didn't they just stick with an IDI?
Because they had to meet emission standards in 94 and a half.
What's an IDI?
Indirect injection.
That's when the first emissions came into effect on diesels, Bear. They couldn't pass it with the IDI. And Cummins was destroying the power that they could get, and an IDI couldn't keep
Yeah,
up.
think about what a 12 valve could do. Even a stock one that were a gutless wonder, but then once you pulled the fuel plate or did even on a first gen one could. I mean, my first gen 12 valve Cummins could still outpull the IDI.
Oh, hands down could outpull the IDI. But it just, I don't know, the emissions argument, it doesn't seem like it's always this horsepower battle. It's what can we do to get more horsepower? How can we get more cells? So I think it still would have been pushed along, just maybe not as quickly.
So I want to touch on something real quick because you brought up emissions, and obviously emissions has to do with the environment, right? Well, it's so many people are so worried about the after effect of running a motor. I don't think they take into consideration that, hey, instead of taking a motor and it could be 1,000,000 miles and every 150,000 you got to replace it now. That's what, 6 motors that they have to make now instead of just one. How much more pollution is there from making 6 motors versus one?
These are also the same people that went and did cash for clunkers because their 20-year-old rig got 8 miles a gallon, not realizing that the car that they just bought produced more emissions than that car probably has produced in its entire life.
It's the focus is in the wrong place, I think.
Well, look, I mean, in 2007, you've got to think about it. Cummins went from a 5.9 liter to a 6.7, right? That's when they also got their huge EGR. Mileage went from most guys were getting in their 2006, 2007 truck.
Diesel Power Magazine actually did this article. They compared the 07 to the 07.5 6.7 emissions equipped truck, and they tested it out. They had equivalent trucks, and they 07 5.9 got about 18 to 20, and the very best they could get out of the 6.7 was 13 miles to the gallon at its best.
Right, and so somehow in their mind that was a good compromise to get worse mileage, use more fuel, which in the end means more particulates and more pollution.
But that's when they were dumping diesel in for the DPF instead of urea, right?
Right.
But no, there was no DPF on those.
They had DPF.
Well, they still dumped diesel into the DPF.
And I mean that's what burns it. And then what is it called? The SOC?
The DOC, so the diesel and oxidation catalyst is the part that heats up to get the exhaust super hot, and that uses diesel still. There's still an exhaust stroke of the injector that injects fuel during the exhaust stroke to heat up that DOC. Then from the DOC goes to the SER, which is a slick catalyst reduction. And from the SER, it goes to the DPF, and diesel particulate filter, which collects all the particulates.
All the carbon.
right.
The smoke.
We can all agree that emissions suck, and we all hate it, 100%. It sucks for gas and diesel motors at that point. But I mean,
I think it moves along it just moves everything along as far as their actual progression.
The evolution
Yes.
of technology.
Yes.
I think it forces it forward.
Well, and let's be honest, guys. I mean, it's the hot rodders like us that really did ruin the industry. I mean, for the black smoke of things. It's like me. Yeah, back when I was 20 years old, I loved rolling coal. But now I'm 30 years old and I hate that my truck rolls coal. I can't stand it. I wish it was clean. And then you have all these do-gooders decide that, oh, that black smoke is evil, not realizing that, oh, what's in it? Nitrogen and oxygen and carbon. Oh, what does grass need to grow? All of those things.
Right. You can actually see how bad the urea injection is. I mean, there's nothing growing down the side of the freeway because the ammonia is just killing everything. And somehow that's better for our environment. But either way, I mean, we digress. We're getting off on emission stuff. But I think that it just moves along the progress of diesel trucks. Do I like what it's doing as far as mileage
No.
and longevity of motors? Absolutely not. But I do think that it is going to make it better. I mean, truthfully, I think we're in that 80s era of the smog years for gas stuff for diesel trucks here in 2020.
Agreed.
Yeah. So, Case, you've got how many vehicles that are diesel?
I just have my one, actually. All the rest of my vehicles are gas, but I'll take that back. Sorry. My personal vehicle is gas, but it's turboed. And then my wife's Jeep, which you can't get in a diesel, or I would have.
Oh, I forgot that you sold your Jetta. I was still thinking you had your Jetta.
And a Passat.
Yeah, so I owned multiple TDIs in the last years or so. So when my first car was a 240D Mercedes. That's a non-turboed diesel 4-cylinder. One of my favorite cars I've ever owned. And the thing I really liked about it, I mean, especially being for a high school kid that had to drive, 15 miles to school every day, Baron?
Yeah, it was 15.
Yeah, and I got 45 miles to the gallon in that thing. I mean, it was incredible.
Not going anywhere fast.
Yeah, and let's also mention that this is on a freeway up it's like a 6% grade. So the fastest you could get going with this car, because my 220, fastest I could go was 60 miles an hour up that hill.
And you were pushing it.
Yeah, it was
it.
everything the car had to go that fast.
Yeah, and so me and Baron basically had it's very similar cars as our first cars, but we caught that diesel bug from our first car, and I think we've always owned a diesel at some point, or always tried to get back to it. Because I remember I went from the 240D to the 300 SDL Mercedes, and then I switched to a 2.5 non-turbo Subaru because I think I blew the motor in my 300. I don't remember
No.
exactly.
That's when they got totaled in front of my house.
That was the 300D, not the 300 SDL.
Correct. That's correct. I forgot mine got totaled. So I ended up having to get a gas car for a while. I actually loved the Subaru life. I mean, I lived in my Outback and had a blast with that, but I was always trying to get something more fuel efficient and back into the diesel world because all of my brothers were into it. So
Subaru makes a flat four diesel, just not here.
yeah, it's just in Australia and not here, which it's just terrible. But it is what it is. It just can't pass emissions. That's why it's not here.
Same with Toyota. I mean, that's if you had one of the Toyota, little trucks,
The Hilux,
because they're the Hiluxes here with the freaking diesel. That would be so awesome, but they can't pass the emissions that we have.
Hey, they could just do a diesel gate like Volkswagen. I mean, Mercedes is getting chased down for that right now too.
Really, I didn't hear about that.
Yeah, it's all over Facebook.
Chrysler is too on their eco truck.
Oh, the Eco Diesel.
Yeah, the Via Motori.
Wow, that's crazy. But yeah, I mean, I've always caught that. So Griffey bought a 2001 Volkswagen Jetta or Golf.
2000, and we're coming. So me, Baron, and Case had diesel Mercedes our whole life, and so that's where we all kind of got our diesel bug from. I would say we actually none of us really owned trucks, and when we were young, we owned cars because Dad had fallen into this like love with Mercedes diesels.
Yeah, SDs, SDLs, the 240Ds, the 300D. I mean,
Hey, don't forget my 220 diesel. Thank you. Mine was a diesel.
gray car.
Gray market car.
Yes, and so I bought a 2000 Volkswagen because one of my buddies was like, "Oh, you'll like it," and I'm just like, "I don't want another Volkswagen." I'm like, they're just problematic cars. But I was tired of fighting with my Mercedes, and so I bought it, and it was really slow. Like,
And problematic.
yes, and I had to put some stuff into it, but I got to go for a deal. And I put injectors and a tune on it, and oh my gosh,
Oh
what
my
a difference!
gosh. Yes.
It is not the fastest car, but it was super fun to drive. That it was just enjoyable to drive.
It was almost as fast as a Camaro.
Right. It was just fun to drive, and it got 40 miles a gallon with your foot in it all the time.
36. It always got 36 or better. I never got worse than
That sounds like my blue bug. Never get anything worse than that. So I got a better deal than Griff did.
That's just crazy to think about that. I mean, we're lead-footed Jensens, no doubt about it.
Our brother-in-law, Skyla's husband, says Jensen's know two things: foot on the gas, foot on the brake.
I think that's Skyla. I'm going to disagree with that.
I'm pretty aggressive. There's not much coasting, I think is what Mike was saying. And if you really think about the way you drive, do you actually really coast, or is your foot usually on the gas, or is it usually on the brake?
Coast. You didn't have to drive Mercedes around. You had two options: full throttle and coasting.
Yeah.
Oh, and stopping as quickly as possible because you couldn't coast anymore because the car was stopping in front of you.
True that, Griffey. True that. So it was a night and day difference when Griffey put his tune and injectors on that Golf.
What year? Like 2014?
No. It was a 2000.
No. When did you get it?
When did you do it?
Oh, 2000. Yeah, 2015, I think is when we did it. And I remember putting the tune onto it because I put it on there, put the injectors into it, and I was going out of my neighborhood, and like I'm used to just jumping on the throttle on this car because my Mercedes, which was slow, had more acceleration than my Golf, and I punched the first time, and I laid down 2 black tracks all the way in front of my house because it moved so much better than it ever had before.
And so he's the one that started us in the VW TDI 19 bug, pun intended. Because I think I was the next one to probably get one.
I think Case might have been the next one. I think he bought his, and then I had chased an issue with mine for like a year on it dying randomly driving down the road, and I figured it out.
If you got Volkswagen questions, Fuff is the one to ask. He is a genius.
Absolutely. He spent a lot of time troubleshooting that daggum ALH motor.
Not just troubleshooting, but learning how to, play with the tune. I mean, like, Griffith was willing to spend the money to buy a tune. I was not. And Griff's like, I'm not willing to try and totally screw up my computer.
I'm not willing to blow up your motor.
I honestly, that wasn't my fear. I didn't even know it existed until I'd paid $650 for my first tune for my car.
That's half of what he paid for that Golf.
Yeah, more than half. I only paid $1,100 for my Golf.
So he paid for his tune. And it was super fun with that tune. Well, I wasn't willing to pay that. And Griff's like, well, I found this other software, but, I'm a little bit afraid to use it. And I'm like, I'm more than willing to try it. So I ordered the stuff. And then we're like, well, we could probably just pull the tune off of yours and then, play with it a little bit and throw it on mine. That didn't work out quite like we planned because come to find out it was encrypted. So,
like everybody's tunes now?
No, it was kind of encrypted. Like, yes, it was. And in that process, I was forced to tune because I had taken my tuner out of my car and my wife or me, it got put into my room and I stepped on it and broke my screen. And so I couldn't flash back. And at the time, I didn't. I could have sent it in and get it repaired, but they were going to charge me like $300 to replace a stupid LCD screen. So I was like, screw it. I'm just going to figure it out. And so I spent a year and a half trying to figure out how to tune. And I mean, I'm still not great, but I got it figured out.
You got it.
Yeah, it was funny because I would call him and he'd be waiting to pick up his daughter from gymnastics. I'd be like, what are you doing? Oh, I just wrote another tune. I'm flashing it. It's like, all right, let me know how it goes.
Oh, no. Story gets better. His wife is in labor. I'm at his house, and he's like, oh, wait a second. Just let me go try this new tune out on my car. His wife is in labor saying we need to go to the hospital. He's like, just give me a minute.
She was fine.
Wow, that's devotion right there. Devotion.
Happy Volkswagen, happy life?
Priorities.
Oh, no. Happy wife, happy life.
Well, she was fine. Yes, we were trying to leave, but I had just figured out something that I had taken a long time to figure out.
You were excited.
He had already been to the hospital like 3 times, so I get it, but it's just hilarious.
Griff is just, when he's focused on something, he gets it done, period. But yeah, so we end up tuning in Laudon's Bug, my Jetta, my buddy Scott's Jetta, Mikey Roosh's Jetta. We did everyone that we knew.
Colby probably, right?
Yeah.
And then Barron's brother-in-law's Jetta got tuned, I think. Like everyone that we knew, we were talking into buying these TDI ALH motors because we had them dialed in. I mean, we had timing belt done in 4 hours, which is crazy.
An hour.
Yeah, Griff can get it done in an hour now.
Barron probably can now too, actually.
Yeah, probably, unfortunately.
Well, it's just amazing how it was like all of a sudden it was a TDI thing. We just bought everything we could do TDI. So I ended up selling my Jetta to one of my good friends. I ended up picking up a 2005 Passat with a TDI in it. That's a 2-liter TDI, which is actually for sale on KSL right now if anyone wants to buy it. Griffey just sent me the listing.
Don't buy it.
Don't buy it.
That's actually what turned off Jason from diesels.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I sold it to Jason. I sold it to him for cheap because I was done playing with it, and then he got into it, and it was a nightmare.
Yeah, and Jason had driven my Golf. The one, like, I blew a turbo up after that, and I haven't got it running since, which is probably going to change. But, and he drove my Golf and was like, geez, this thing gets with it. I'm like, yeah, I know. And so he bought that Passat, and it always had a problem.
The turbo would shut off like mid-acceleration.
Yeah, it had a boost leak somewhere.
It had issues, and so I ended up getting rid of it. Jason got rid of it, but it was honestly the most beautiful car.
It is pretty.
Besides my Beamer that I've owned. It is just beautiful.
I had a beautiful car.
Oh,
It was silver.
stop bringing up the Trans
Is it
Am.
Trans Am?
Yep.
We're talking about get diesel here, Grippy, not gas.
I really liked my SDL too.
Yeah, you still have your SDL and everything, and so
Sitting in my backyard.
I ended up buying a when we moved to Salt Lake, I bought a 2006. Holy cow! I'm trying to remember the year. Do you guys remember the year of the Mercedes I bought?
It was an 07 or 08.
07. That's what it was. It was the first year of that. It's a 07 ML 320. So it was a V6 single turbo turbo diesel. Motor ran great. That car was just, if you know what an ML looks like in that body style, and it was tan.
Just classic looking. They look good.
They look great for a woman to drive. I'm not trying to be mean, but it
Very.
They looked
feminine.
very feminine.
every time I saw another ML out on the road, guess who was driving it? A girl. And I never felt comfortable in this thing ever. And so Griffey, he knew I was feeling uncomfortable. And I've never been a truck person. And you can talk to any of my brothers about it. I've just never seen the enjoyment of a truck. So I'm always looking for either a car.
You're not a man till you have a big truck.
That's fine.
We're all compensating for something.
Or Jensen's.
So we were, Griffey turns me on to the car that I have now, which is my 2010 BMW X5 diesel. And this car,
35D.
35D, it is a inline six. So it's got the inline six sound that every BMW has.
Sounds like a Cummins.
No, it sounds like a Beamer.
It sounds like a BMW.
It sounds like a baby Cummins, especially when you get all the exhaust done.
Well, yeah, I still gotta do mine. But it's twin turboed. It's a riot. I mean, Dane's got one now because I bought mine, and they are just beyond comfortable on the inside, and they are just they're a BMW. I mean, they are just meant to be driven.
They handle like a sports car.
Their driver's car.
Amazes me how that thing handles.
I completely agree. Like, we were just out for a drive today, and I kept saying to my wife, "Man, I love this thing. Man, I love this thing." And so every time I have someone to come over and drive my car, I'm like, "Go take it for a drive and go enjoy it." And they always come back saying they love it.
So yeah, so Case has got a few. Baron's got his GL, and so does Griff. I don't even know if they want to discuss those things.
Both of which are getting sold soon.
No, mine I'm gonna keep.
I'm getting rid of mine. I need money for school.
I think both me and Barrett actually ended up fixing the issues that we were having with them, and it ended up being something stupid, to be honest.
Oh yeah, and it's their same exact motor that were in my ML, and so the power is there. They're a headache to work on.
They're just not powerful. I mean, they don't lay you in the seat. I mean, even tuned, it's like, well, it moves okay. I mean, I bet you the comparable 450 GL moves the same as my tuned 350 does.
or more,
I would definitely say that my BMW is much more powerful, in my opinion.
without a doubt.
And mine is way more.
But it is not more comfortable to fit 6 people in it,
Definitely
and
not.
that is what my GL is for, and that's the reason why I still have it. Even owning a 15-passenger van in an excursion, that one just gets better mileage and it fits them. I'll call it comfortably, not as comfortable as some, but
Well, I mean, at the end of the day, it's a Mercedes. They're just like, for me, I want like Case like sport luxury. I want luxury. And that's what Mercedes is good at. Their transmission shifts slow, but they just ride good. The interiors feel good. Every surface you touch is leather. I mean, they're just comfortable, very luxurious cars.
Bear, what was your tune? How much extra did you get out of it?
very little. It's like 30 horsepower and maybe 50 foot-pounds of torque.
And that's the same thing I'm finding with the Volkswagens too, the Audis. But the thing with that BMW, it's Case. What is it? Do you remember?
It's 115 horsepower and almost 150 foot-pounds of torque.
That was 170 foot-pounds extra.
Agreed. Better. And
Like, they're tunable.
don't get me wrong. I'm also the one that turned Case onto said BMW because I did all this research and I'm like, Case, you have to buy this car. It's awesome.
And it was one heck of a deal. It by far the best deal I've ever been a part of.
Yeah, you stole that thing.
100%. Like, I've literally done nothing to that vehicle except for change the oil on it since I bought it.
I would definitely say that is not the case for me because I have gotten my fair share of very good deals.
True that. We come to the conclusion that if a good deal comes along, like it says in The Richest Man in Babylon, you buy it.
Yep.
Well, you can't be scared. I mean, that's where people end up making their money is on the good deals, and then you sell it and you make money on it. But you got to be willing to take the risk, and you got to have the money in order to get it.
Without risk, there's no reward.
I've never lost money on a car except for owned by mom.
Because she destroys them.
Not a diesel though. But that was I really enjoyed driving that 7 Series.
So Dane, what's your current truck again?
So I have a 2015 Silverado Duramax 2500. It's leveled on 35s. Since I got my BMW, it basically pulls my toy hauler, and that's about it.
Hey, same thing my truck does.
Yeah, it's that truck I got 2 years ago. Shoot, almost 3 years ago, and I paid $34,000 for it. It had 136,000 miles on it. But even with that kind of mileage to get that price for it, I mean, it was just amazing. A guy he moved from Tennessee to San Diego and decided it was too big and he couldn't sell it in San Diego because he had done some things to it that you can't do in California, and those things didn't bother me. And so I ended up getting it for an extremely good deal.
So you know how to fix those things, is what you're saying?
Yes, absolutely. I know how to fix those things. So, but it's tuned. It's, got a 5-inch exhaust. It's got intake and Y-bridge and intercooler pipes, and
It's a very fast truck. Very fast.
it's so nice. I honestly don't think I'll ever get a truck. And the interior in it is beautiful. And yes, I love that truck. It's an LTZ, dark gray. Like everything about the truck, if I were to build this truck from factory, it has on it.
I've had the luxury of actually driving that thing, towing. I borrowed Dane's Razor a couple of times, and I got to drive his truck and use it. And it is the new Chevy's interior are just the nines. I mean, they're just top. They are just everything you've ever wanted, especially his truck. It's got everything you'd ever want in it. And the thing just tows. Doesn't even realize it's behind or has a trailer behind it.
It's like any of the new trucks, though.
It does with my toy hauler, huh, Baron?
Now, if it was just as reliable as my old unreliable 6.0.
Baron, it broke down one time, and what was the stupid thing that broke?
Emissions.
The emissions crap.
So I also wanted to say that because Dane said there's 136,000 miles on his truck when he bought it. Like all diesels, the motors just last significantly longer than gas vehicles. Period. So that's why we're not scared to buy a vehicle with over 130. I mean, the lowest mileage car I've ever purchased was my BMW at 100,000 miles on it.
Well, and let's get the backstory here. My 6.0 has 240,000 miles on it. And then the Excursion that Griff's wife drove around forever when we did the body swap, that engine, that whole drivetrain had 300,000+ miles, and that one ran the best out of all of them. And then I bought another truck that had 305,000 on it, and it was the best running 6.0 I had owned.
Not to mention my 7.3 with 491.
Yeah, I think that takes the cake. My BMW has 186,000, and I just got numbers. So stock on that BMW is 238 horse. The tune takes it to 340, and then it's stock 321 foot-pounds and takes it to 484 foot-pounds. So 114 horsepower and 173 foot-pounds to the wheels. I mean, that's an incredible amount of power for just a tune.
Well, and the car is fun to drive even before it's tuned. I mean, we got to give BMW that.
100%.
I mean, it's got plenty of power before it was tuned.
Yeah, what did I say? 238 to the wheels and 321 to the wheels. I mean, those aren't bad numbers. Those are basically the original Duramax numbers.
Yeah, they run really good.
Maybe a little more torque.
I think the best one I've seen is Scott's TDI. He's got an 03 Jetta wagon that he's lifted and put a whole bunch of stuff on. He's got 360,000 miles on that truck, or on that Jetta, and still plunking right along, being lifted and everything.
Are we talking about the 490,000 on my 7.3?
Yes, I know. But
Stock transmission.
seriously?
That's incredible, especially a 7.3.
That truck is really impressive.
Yes.
It was a one-owner vehicle before Griff bought it.
Yes.
And think about Dad's Excursion. I mean, Dad's Excursion would get 25 miles per gallon.
And it had 300,000 miles on it, and it was one of the best running.
Yeah, that was definitely the best truck that Dad's owned.
The freaking gearboxes on those, the steering boxes, oh my gosh. So terrible.
Yeah, they suck. I still need to replace mine.
Mine drives fine.
I think, it just takes a while. They wear out. There's no doubt about it.
But that's all easy stuff, like ball joints and tie rod ends, and I mean that's all easy stuff that you can do, and then you go get it aligned, and you're good to go for another 150,000
So I guess
miles.
my question, I mean, for all the listeners, they're probably like, why are we all talking about diesels? But I would say the reason why we all enjoy diesels is for their longevity and the mileage, and the power.
And the power
Torque. All the torques.
Yeah, the power.
that they never stop pulling.
Yeah, and they seem to be built much stouter. I mean, it's more of a, the trucks and even the Beamers, they're just built tougher a lot of the time. And that's what's nice about them is that you don't have to worry about it as much as you would a gas motor. I mean, I love a good small block Chevy and a good LS, but it doesn't have anything on any of my diesels.
Yep.
The one thing though is it seems like most diesels are more expensive to fix in the long run.
Yep.
They're also more expensive to buy.
Yeah, that's because they hear diesel and it's twice as much money.
Well, I mean, the injectors and stuff, they're just more money. I mean, it's like I had a friend of mine the other day. He was like, should I buy a gasser or should I buy a diesel? And I'm all like, well, what do you use it for? And he was like, oh, well, I just go up the mountain occasionally. I'm thinking about buying a camp trailer I'll use once or twice a year. I was like, buy a gasser. It'll cost you half as much to own.
Yep, like my 07 LBZ Chevy, I had 300,000 miles on that. I sold it for 15.5, and if that was a gas motor with the 5.3 in it, I probably could have gotten 5,000 out of it.
That's actually what this buddy went and bought, was a gasser Chevy for $5,000.
If you're going to use it for what it's meant to be used for, it's worth the money. If you're not, don't spend the money on it because, I mean, yeah, you can get into something else.
Don't waste the money. You're paying more for fuel, and then you're paying more for the motor by a ton. Like my option, I have the Maroni sticker from my Chevy truck, and it is a $9,999 option for a Duramax with the Allison transmission. $10,000 for a motor and tranny.
And it will never be worth less than the 10. That's why they hold that value.
Probably true.
Well, so I mean, we've kind of got our ideas of why we all drive them. I mean, we do a lot of towing. I mean, I don't think any of us don't tow a vehicle, other than maybe Case. Case doesn't do a lot of heavy stuff, but when he does, let's be honest, he borrows somebody else's
Case
vehicle.
towed his little camp trailer thing with his BMW.
He did.
When it broke, and I had to go rescue
And
it.
it was like the trailer was twice as big as the vehicle was.
20-foot long trailer. I mean, I'm still impressed with the tow rating for those Beamers. It's 6,000 pounds. And I mean, it towed it perfectly fine until I lost a stupid vacuum line. That's all that caused my issue. So I take that back. I did have one issue with it, my vacuum lines.
Right.
It happens.
Ooh, what, $27 in parts?
If that.
Man, I spent more on fuel coming to rescue you.
Exactly.
Thanks, Baron.
So we've got these things that we drive, but I mean, that's why we feel like diesels are a better option for what we do. Now, they're not necessarily a better option for everybody, but they certainly are for us. And as far as like the TDI stuff, we're also looking for power. You'll find a lot of guys out there on like the TDI forums and stuff like that they're looking for mileage. They're these hyper mileage guys, and that's not us. I mean, if we can get to 36 and still have fun, that's us. And so we're looking for the power. We're also looking for the longevity. We're looking for just a good daily driving vehicle. But short of that, unless somebody else has got something else to talk about on this episode, I think we'll probably close
Actually,
it up
I just
for
wanted
tonight.
to throw this out there. I mean, we did a little bit different style podcast tonight. We were just more of a discussion type. Let us know if you liked it. Leave us a comment or send us an email. So we can find us on Instagram and Facebook at King Ugly Crew. And then you can send us an email at kinguglycrew@gmail.com. And just let us know. Plus, keep sending us topic ideas. Let us know what you guys want to talk about. We will get back to the car crashes, I promise that, and other things. And we're going to keep this thing going. So please let us know how we like it.
Yeah, and make sure that you can make some comments on Anchor, also on Spotify. You can make comments on there. You can also rate us. The more ratings we get, the better we can get out to more people and they can have some fun with us as well. iTunes is the same way. All right, well, I think we're going to close up for the night. We certainly love that you guys listen to our podcast, and we'll call it a night.
Stay ugly.